Look around you. Every building, every machine, every tangible object you interact with started in exactly the same place, as an invisible, formless idea. In 1904, a retired judge named Thomas Troward stood before an audience in Edinburgh and presented a precise, almost mechanical theory of human existence. He argued that the human mind is not a passive mirror reflecting the world, but the actual engine generating it. Drawing on the emerging physics of his day, Troward pointed out that what we call solid matter is largely an illusion. A lump of steel isn't dead. It is a dense field of atoms vibrating with intense energy, constantly awaiting direction from an underlying intelligence. Because intelligence is a quality of thought, Troward concluded that thought is the first cause. It is the raw material that sets the physical world into motion. The problem is how we experience this reality on a daily basis. We observe our surroundings, our bank accounts, our relationships, our careers, and we let those external conditions dictate how we feel inside. In this passage from his published lectures, Troward explains exactly where this goes wrong. He writes that our existing limitations are the direct result of having habitually impressed the idea of limitation upon our own minds. By allowing the outside world to be the source of our inner state, we trap ourselves in a loop. We see a limitation, we internalize it as a fact, and that our minds go to work reproducing that exact limitation in our future. That heavy feeling of being controlled by circumstances is a self-inflicted architectural error. We are letting the building dictate the blueprint. To correct this error, Troward mapped out what he called the dual architecture of human cognition. He described the mind as a highly efficient two-part machine. The front half of this system is the objective mind. This is your conscious awareness. It acts as the director of the system, responsible for reasoning, volition, and deciding which thoughts are allowed through. The back half is the subjective mind. This is the tireless executor. It does not reason, and it does not argue. It simply accepts whatever suggestions the objective mind passes down to it, acting entirely on habit and pattern. The defining rule of this mechanism is obedience. Troward observed that the subjective mind, with absolute fidelity, reproduces and works out to its final consequences whatever the objective mind impresses upon it. If your objective mind dwells on anxiety or lack, the subjective mind takes that as a direct order. The physical conditions of our lives are simply the mechanical output of this deeper mind, blindly executing our conscious habits. Over a century later, this philosophical model maps cleanly onto modern cognitive science. Troward is anticipating the mechanics of human behavior. Today, the clinical foundation of cognitive behavioral therapy rests on a nearly identical premise. Human beings do not react directly to events in the world. We react to our interpretation of those events. A core belief held in the mind acts as a first cause. Once that belief is locked in, the secondary conditions, like the physiological response of your nervous system or the actions you take next, automatically follow the pattern. Therapists call this reframing. Control the interpretation internal, and you dictate the biological and behavioral output. To achieve true agency, Troward offers a precise instruction. As we see in his text here, he tells us we must reverse our method of thinking and regard the ideal as the real. In practice, this means we have to stop wrestling with the outside world. Trying to manipulate secondary conditions, the symptoms of our lives, while leaving the core belief intact is a waste of energy. We have to change the first cause. When we drop the reactive habits of the ego and firmly establish a new internal blueprint, the subjective mind receives a new order. The outward manifestation has no choice but to adjust to fit the new internal pattern. And Troward scales this up to the universe itself. In this passage, he argues that the intelligence of nature is waiting to be called into activity, and that it can respond to us only as we recognize it. By understanding the machinery of our own minds, we stop functioning as passive recipients of chance. We become active co-authors, writing the internal code that the physical world is bound to execute.